Join me today and find out why the Secretary of Defense made a huge mistake. Why is Tim Walz making the rounds on social media? Nobody really cares anymore. Doge had to take back about $900 million from the state of Florida. And Ron DeSantis, you got to do the right thing, man. You got to do the right thing. Stick around. You just might learn something. Welcome to the Eric T. Conversation. I'm Eric T. Our Congress is not doing their job. They're not. Trump is continually giving executive orders, and he's doing it to implement these initiatives right away, immediately. But then Congress has to take those executive orders and turn them into legislation so they can become laws. And they are failing miserably at that. It is almost laughable that they just can't get the momentum going to make things happen. It's called going across the aisle and shaking the hands of the Democrats and seeing if you can come to some kind of agreement to get things done. And the Senate, they're no better. They're not doing anything either. And the problem I have with the Senate and Congress all in itself, it's not really what it's supposed to be. The Senate was actually chosen by state legislatures before 1913. 1913, they came up with the 17th Amendment, and they allowed senators to be chosen by elections. Before that, they were actually given that role of 2 senators per state to represent the actual state's needs. And right now, we have people like Senator Schumer and others that are constantly talking about federal things that really, they don't care about their own home state. And that's not how it was supposed to be when the Constitution was created. Then it got ratified because during those early years, when they had senators, a lot of them would not show up. They would, quit their position because it was a lot of pressure having to actually represent where you're from, your city or your state that you're from. So in order to alleviate that, they ratified it, came up with the 17th Amendment. So now we have elections statewide for these individuals to represent the Senate. But they're not representing each state anymore. They're not. Congress doesn't really do that either. They get in there and they just kind of do whatever they feel they need to do by the pressures of the lobbyists and the big money people that are putting pressure on them to go one way or the other for their decisions and their votes. But Trump is doing everything he's supposed to do. Everything he said he did, right? Promises made, promises are being kept every single day, and he's moving very rapidly. And Congress needs to start moving in that direction and as quickly as Trump is doing, and start making laws out of these executive orders. Or this is all for nothing. Trump just signed an executive order for elections. And some of the things that were on there were this. There was citizenship, proof for voting, funds tied to integrity, compliance, paper ballots, the AG to track the election fraud, crackdown on late ballots, and access Biden's voter turnout EO. But that doesn't mean anything. He can sign an executive order all day. It doesn't mean anything unless Congress gets in there and acts on that and makes that a law. All federal elections should be paper ballots. There should be one-day voting. It should be a nationwide holiday, and everybody gets to vote. And then early voting for those who can't make it or whatever, you're going to get 2 weeks. You get 2 weeks to vote. That's it. If you can't get to the ballots in 2 weeks, too bad. And no more mail-in ballots. No more. Unless you're in a military situation and you're deployed somewhere or in another country, no more mail-in ballots. We don't need those. We don't need the absentee ballots. If you can't get there in 2 weeks, you don't need to vote. Plain and simple. I know it's everybody's right to vote. It's very important. But if you have 2 weeks to get to a polling station and you can't get there in those 2 weeks, too bad. Maybe you shouldn't be voting anyway. But these executive orders that Trump is doing, they're great. And it's great. He's keeping his promises. But in 4 years, it's going to be wiped out with whoever comes in office. Well, if it's a Democrat, it's definitely going to get wiped out. So we need to start pushing forward, and we need to start calling our congressmen and our senators who really should be representing your state to get them to do what they're supposed to do and enforcing and coming up with these laws and pass them so we can make it an actual change in our country. Trump came out yesterday and said he was going to no more tax on overtime. He's going to sign it. It's going to happen. but is it going to be a law? Oh, well, I know it's going to be a problem if he does an executive order and tries to wipe that out. Guess what's going to happen? Everybody's going to enjoy not getting taxes out of their overtime pay. And when you don't have taxes out of your overtime pay, that's going to be really hard to implement back in if somebody else gets into office. So I think you should go ahead and try to implement that as fast as possible. I don't know the legalities of him doing an executive order for that, because I know they got to change the tax code for the IRS. But if he abolishes the IRS, you don't need a tax code because the IRS is gone. So we'll see what happens on April 2nd with this big announcement. But there's a lot of things in legislation that he is trying to put forward that isn't getting through the proper channels. And I'm having an issue with some of that stuff. It really needs to go to Congress, and they need to start voting on it very quickly. And they move at a snail's pace, absolutely snail's pace. So the big uproar was Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth with his Signal chat group. So the left is going nuts. Oh my gosh, he sent all these secret plans on these attacks that they were doing. Guess what? It all worked out. The attacks went on without a hitch. And the reporter that was, I guess, on those chat messages, why was he on there? They're going to find out how that person got added to that chat group. Somebody added him. Okay. Everybody who's talked about this situation has already said, we don't know how this individual got on this chat thread, but the person decided to post it anyway. That should be a problem all in itself. Just because you're a reporter and you find out some information and you know what kind of information it could possibly be, it doesn't mean you should post all of that. There are lives that are involved in this. There are executions of targets and strategic plans that go into that stuff. And if you start posting that in your newspaper column, it can jeopardize our men and women in the military. But from what I've heard from Pete Hegseth today, it was a big nothing burger. They don't have war plans. Execution plans come from the generals. Okay, so he gives a directive, hey, we need to do this, that, and this. And then the 4-star generals that are at the chiefs of staff, they come up and implement the strategies to go after those types of targets. And then they present them to the Department of Defense and the president. And then they say, okay, go ahead with those plans and let's move forward on those. That's not what the plans were. So it's a big nothing burger, but the left is going to keep blowing it up like it's like he just created, espionage or treason for our country by some text messaging through a group that got to a reporter. I don't know. A lot of stranger things are happening. They're trying to figure out everything they can do to get rid of some of these people. That's what they're doing constantly. The left, I just wish the left would just try to get along and go along and get along with everybody. But instead of infighting constantly, Jasmine Crocker, that Democrat congresswoman, she's all over the TV now. You know why? Because the Democrat got another mouthpiece. And they're like, okay, we need you to go out there and we need you to hoot and holler, make these statements. I mean, the chick can't even barely speak proper English. It's almost laughable about the people that the left tries to put out in front of us to try to change everybody's mind. It's absurd. We don't need people like that trying to influence one way or the other, rile up hate, to go after the Tesla vehicles and burn those cars down of innocent people that just decided to buy them because they wanted eco-friendly cars, or they didn't want to go to the gas station all the time and felt happier plugging it in at home. But we have people like her that are constantly trying to spew hateful rhetoric to get the left and their base riled up, which it's laughable to me. I just don't understand that. People are so naive and they're so gullible at times because they hear it over and over and over again. And you're getting blasted from all sides. You get it on the TV. You get it on your social media platforms. You get it on the radio. It depends, what you're listening to. And everybody gets different things at different times, and they get influenced. And thank God it's not the majority of the country that falls for this stuff. It's a small percent of the country. But, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? The more these smaller groups complain, the more we feel like we have to do something about it because they complain the worst. They do. They complain the worst and the loudest. Hopefully we can start getting progress through it, and Trump can start getting these things implemented by Congress so we can start squashing the flames of the fire. Because right now they don't have a whole lot of ammunition, but they sure are trying to get whatever they can pushed through. And President Trump also signed an executive order for the Treasury to come up with a payment system that is more reliable, more trackable, and easier and quicker. What does that sound like? That sure sounds like the blockchain to me. I said that a couple of months ago that everything's going to be on the blockchain. Trump to sign an executive order for the U.S. Treasury to come up with those plans on how to do that. And there's only one way to do that, through the blockchain. And the reason why they're going to do that is, like I said before, they want to track all the payments. So if USAID is starting to send money to different groups or organizations or different countries, you're going to be able to track all of that spending from point A to point B and everywhere it stops in between. And I think that's a great idea. But now Congress needs to act, and they need to come up with a bill, present it to the committee, vote on it, pass it through Congress, and get it to the Senate. And if you are one of those people that are being influenced by these people, that is a bad thing to track the spending and where this money goes, there's nothing we can say to try to fix you, because you're going to continue to hate the right no matter what comes out of it. Even if they stop wasteful spending, you're going to believe something is nefarious that's going on with that. And why is Tim Walz all over the social media and the news? Did this guy not get it? He didn't win. He was like a laughingstock. Now he's on social media and being interviewed saying he can kick MAGA's ass. I mean, I get it. He's trying to fix his image by going on these podcasts, and trying to show that he's a tough guy and saying that he can fix a truck. But it's so obvious what he's trying to do. He's trying to create a better image for himself because he believes his own hype. This guy probably believes he could run again in 2028, because this is what happens. They get that momentum. They're on TV. They're on the news. They're getting all those pats on the back from their base. They're getting great DMs, great comments in all their social media posts from their side. And they believe it to the point where they're like, well, man, I'm so popular right now. I should run for 2028, but I got to try to convince other people from the right or the middle to vote for me. How do I do that? I got to man up my image a little bit. No, you look ridiculous. You do. You look absolutely ridiculous. Nobody believes it. Nobody. You're stolen valor. You lied every time you were up on stage in a debate with J.D. Vance. It was comical how much you actually lied up there. And every time you lied, they proved you wrong within 30 seconds. So he's doing this showboat right now to try to change his image, which is going to be very, very hard to do. And I think he's just done. Once you change the state flag of Minnesota to almost look like the Somalia flag, I think you've lost the majority of the country. So he should just go off to quiet land, run his state into the ground like he's doing, and just get off the podcast, dude. You're not doing yourself any favors for that. But, Gavin Newsom's doing the same thing. He's trying to fix this. They're all laying the groundwork and the foundation to try to run for 2028. And Gavin Newsom was on Charlie Kirk, it was ridiculous. Like, I don't even know why these conservative podcasts have these guys on there, because they're going to say what the right wants to hear. That, oh, you're more to the middle now. You don't believe with the trans thing going on. You believe, men should stay out of women's sports. They're going to say all those right things, and it's going to make the right go, wow, he's really come around. No, just remember, folks, when you're voting for people, you got to look at their record. Their record speaks for themselves. I know a lot of people don't like Trump, but you can go back 30, 35 years on interviews he had on Oprah with Barbara Walters. He was saying the exact same thing he is saying today. Nothing's changed, except for he was a Democrat, now he's a Republican. But he was saying the same thing. So watch out for the wolves in sheep clothing, because Gavin Newsom's going to get to the point where he's going to get Cuomo'd. He's going to be getting so far to the middle of the Democrat Party that they're going to do a Cuomo on him and start going after him and get him disgraced that he has to drop out of any race. Democrats are like that. If you don't toe the line, it's Kobayashi and Maru for you. And that's what they're going to do if he keeps going more towards the middle, which it's all a game anyway. He doesn't really feel that way. I mean, you could have just seen how he acted during California fire. You could have seen how he acted during COVID, telling everybody mandate masks everywhere, yet he's out at a dinner without a mask on, hanging out in a group of people at a dinner. They're hypocrites. And people just don't fall for it. Just don't fall for it. And here's something interesting in the news with my governor, Governor DeSantis. They found $900 million in government subsidies that they had given to the state of Florida. He returned it. Like, he wanted to return it. He didn't know how to do that. Nobody knew how to do that. Nobody in the Treasury knew how to take back money that was given from the federal government. He contacted Elon Musk and Doge, and they found out a way to get that money back eventually, but no one's ever done that. And that's how you run a state, like DeSantis did it. You have you balance the budget, you pay your bills, and you get a surplus to the point where you don't want federal funding anymore. Because the federal funding came with some stipulations because they wanted to change some of the policies if you accepted that money. Trans stuff, boys and women's sports, things like that. He don't want it. So he sent it back. And you know what? I think after about a half hour of them trying to figure out how they could do that, they sent the money back. $900 million. That's fantastic. And that's why he's a great governor. And I really feel bad that he ran in 2024. It's heartbreaking because the guy was probably the next heir apparent. He ran the state of Florida like a well-oiled machine during COVID. We were an open state to the point where we're getting an influx of new people coming into the state of Florida, where the Republicans has flipped the Democrat Party by almost 1 million people. It's flipped. This is no longer a battleground state. This is a red state, and it's going to be a red state. And a lot of that has to do with Ron DeSantis and how he managed the state during the COVID pandemic. Hands down. I've had customers that I gone to do estimates for, and I've talked to them, and some of them actually told me that they were living in New York or somewhere else where they had huge lockdowns, a lot of regulations during COVID. They came here, stayed at Airbnb for 6 months, loved it so much that they decided to move down here. I heard that more than 2 or 3 times. So that's just people I interacted with. An area that I live in, it's booming right now. You can't drive on some of these roads. It's so much traffic. And it was this nice little area in Brevard County on the east coast of Florida where Cape Canaveral is. And it's a nice little kept secret. Not anymore. People are flowing to the state. And Texas, Idaho, where things are ran much better than some other parts of the United States. And that's how it should be. But he's kind of screwed up by running. I get it. He took the bait, and whoever was whispering in his ear to do it, he should have just had the guts to say, I'm not going to do it. Trump got me in the office because he almost lost. When he won his first election, he barely won. Trump had to drag him over the finish line. So Ron DeSantis, by him running, a lot of MAGA people just are not going to forgive that. They're not, and they're not going to forget. Trust me. They think he's bought and paid for by the deep state right. He's got a lot of baggage to clear himself of if he wants to run for president in 2028. And I think he's going to do that. And I think right now, all the things that he's doing in the state are trying to show that he wants to make amends. Whether it's legit, I don't know. But I really think he is. He's doing the no property tax, trying to get rid of property tax for homeowners in the state of Florida. He is saying and doing all of the right things, all of them. He took the state legislature, brought them back to an emergency session to try to get the policies done for illegal immigration, get those taken care of. The legislature was kind of pissed off about it. They didn't want to come back. They thought they can do it in March when the legislation session starts. He said, no, you need to come back now. This is Trump's mandate. We want to follow through with that and get that out of the way. But he did that, and he think he's doing that to try to save face. So we'll see how good he does in the next 2 years. But, right now, him talking about his wife running for governor, that's a big mistake, too. He should have just kept his mouth shut. Nobody wants their wife running for governor. I'm sorry. You may not like that. But Ron DeSantis, your wife has no experience. She's a great first lady, wonderful person, cancer survivor, and that's great. Probably a great mother, probably a great wife. But for you to present your wife as a potential candidate, now I get it. They asked you questions, and what you said was, well, she would do a great job. You're not going to say your wife's going to do a bad job. I get it. But she should come out and say, I'm not running for governor. Because if she's going to run for governor, it's going to be more of a black eye for you. And you already got a hole to climb out of. So endorsing your wife to run for governor, it was like Hillary running for president. Okay. It was a cute idea, but it's not going to happen. And if you want to save face and get the majority of the Republicans back on your side, don't endorse your wife. She needs to come out and say, I am not running because Donaldson's got it in the bag and you don't need any more flack than you already got because you want to run for 2028. So we'll see what happens. Well, that's it for today. Join me next time for a little chit chat, some observations, and some good old fashioned conversation. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Please subscribe, like, hit those notification buttons because I really appreciate it. Thanks.